Baylor has a new offensive line coach, and boy, does he have his work cut out for him. Let's find out who it is. This is an emergency Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode, bonus episode, emergency episode of Locked On Baylor, as the Bears have hired a new offensive line coach, Kapilovic from Michigan State. And we mentioned it in the show today, actually, was how important this group is. I mean, for any football team, right? But specifically for this Baylor team, and how it's going to lead to success this season, and however long Dave Aranda's tenure is here at Baylor. The success came in with Aranda in 2021 because of the offensive line. So the success didn't necessarily come in with Aranda. It came in with Jeff Grimes and Eric Mateos. But that positional group has been in a tailspin ever since. They brought back a lot of the guys in 2022. It wasn't as productive, but still okay. And this year, the offensive line was terrible at best, if not non-existent. So just never hit a rhythm this year. And I talked about in the show today that they're basically all coming back again. For better or for worse, the whole offensive line is basically coming back. George Maley is not, but everyone else is back. I know Tate Williams had to retire. So other than that, you're bringing back the whole unit. And Eric Mateos is now off to Arkansas. That's probably a good thing for Baylor and for him. And so Kapilovic is the new guy here at Baylor. He comes from Michigan State, like I said, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think the best thing about him is the experience he brings. I mean, he's been doing this for over 20, 25 years coaching. But the way I look at the stats, it's not great. And I get it. I'm going to preface this by saying this. I completely understand that stats only go so far, really, in any position, but definitely the offensive line. You need to take it with a grain of salt. Again, they're an important and integral part of the team, but they don't stat well, if you will. You know, there's no pancake block stat. It becomes a team stat because I got to look at the offense and the rushing numbers and the sack numbers. And so take this with a grain of salt, but I look at the numbers on the offenses he's worked on, and it's not terrific. Now this year, Michigan State was 68th in sacks allowed with only 25, which is 9 less than Baylor. So already that's an improvement. But looking at the numbers, actually, before I do, let's go over his resume a little bit. Now, he has been at it since 2001. That was his first coaching job. Started lower level and really worked his way up. I mean, Alabama State, Missouri State, Southern Miss, and all of those with offensive line in the title, every single one of them. And that remains his way throughout his career. And then goes to take the job as the OL coach at North Carolina under Larry Fedora. And he's basically there for Fedora's whole tenure. Now, we remember Larry Fedora as the 2020 Baylor Bears offense, Larry Fedora. But I think it is important to remember he had some good teams at Carolina. That Russell Athletic Bowl, that Baylor didn't have a quarterback and ran for whatever 600 yards or whatever it was, that was a great day for us. But it's easy to forget that Baylor was the underdog in that game. Carolina was number 10 in the nation. So, you know, it's not that game necessarily isn't a great look on Larry Fedora, but it shows that he had some good seasons. He ends up becoming the associate head coach there, a year at Colorado, 3 years at Michigan State. 3 years at Michigan State, 4 years at Michigan State. And every time he's got the offensive line as a part of his job. And for the last 3 years at Carolina and for the 4 years at Michigan State, he was the associate head coach. So he's someone who comes in with that kind of experience. But looking at the numbers a little bit more, again, it's not terrific. Looking from 2021 through 23 at Michigan State, the offense this year was 125th in the nation which weirdly enough is also the same ranking that they had for rushing offense this year, which that's so Big Ten. And I do need to mention in this that the wheels kind of fell off Michigan State in September when Mel Tucker was fired and kind of the crap storm that came with that. So again, maybe that one 2 grains of salt. But even the year before, 2022, they were 92nd at total offense and 111th in rushing. So not great, not great at all. But in 21, which was that really successful Mel Tucker year, they were 39th in total offense, which was 1 spot ahead of Baylor, by the way, who had the best season they've ever had. That was the Sugar Bowl Big 12 year. And we're 53rd in rushing offense. So again, very Big Ten. At best, it's run of the mill in terms of offensive stats. Now, again, that doesn't completely fall on the offensive line and the offensive line coach, but that's just the raw numbers. And then the other 2 spots, what I looked at were his first seasons, because I don't know how long any of these coaches in this coaching staff will last. And so I think a lot of them are coming in with kind of that 1-year mentality. They'll have to deal with a lot of the same personnel that Baylor had on the roster this year. So I don't know how many of these guys they're going to be able to, these coaches, they're going to be able to bring in their own guys or anything. So I thought it was important to look at first year and what he was able to do in his first year. Because again, Grimes and Mateos come in and they fix one of the worst offenses in the nation in year 1. And that's the pinnacle for them at Baylor. So let's look at first year. So Colorado, he's only there 1 year, and that's in 2019. They had the 100th ranked offense in the nation and 80th in rushing offense. So didn't quite turn things around very quickly, but then he goes to Michigan State. So let's go back even further. North Carolina, first year. Total offense was 43rd. Not bad. Again, Baylor's best year overall, obviously not offensively. They were number 1 a few times in the last decade and a half. But their best year overall at 12-2 in 2021, they were only 40th in offense. So Carolina, he's 43rd in that first year and 85th in rushing offense. Obviously, Baylor was a little bit better than that in 2021. So the numbers just don't jump off the page even a little bit. He has been doing this a long time. And the weird thing that I kind of like about this is, and I would have liked this earlier in Dave Aranda's tenure, is they don't have a lot of links, he and Aranda. In fact, I think the only link is that Aranda hired Larry Fedora, and Fedora had at one time hired Chris Kapilovic. But it's not trying to bring in the same thing and hoping it works again. Obviously, Aranda did that at OC, where he went a little off the beaten path for him and brought in a completely different guy in Jake Spavital. And now he is bringing in at least someone from a different philosophy with Chris Kapilovic. I do want to mention what Larry Fedora had to say about him. This was from David Smoke, who I guess had just reached out to him for comment. Fedora said, quote, "This was an excellent hire by Dave Aranda. I was fortunate that Cap was my OL coach the entire 11 years that I was a head coach." So there you go. I was right about that. Cap is known for getting the most out of his players. He's able to be tough and demanding because his players understand that he loves them and wants the best for them. He's an excellent recruiter that Texas high school coaches will love. I can't imagine a better hire for Baylor. Consider the source. I'm glad Larry Fedora isn't saying anything bad about him. But there's nothing to point out from the offenses that he's ran that he is just this dynamite recruiter. We hear that about everybody that comes in as an assistant coach. Everybody says they're a great recruiter, except for maybe Jake Spavital, who's a portal guy. Everyone says that. They're on the couches, they're reeling in families, blah, blah, blah. It's the same line every time. We hear it. We heard it about Jorge Munoz. We heard it about Eric Mateos. We heard it last week about Kenan Hall, and now we're hearing it about Chris Kapilovic. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm kind of sick of hearing about it for everyone. That's just kind of a cop-out answer. Of course, I expect his former head coach to say that, but you're not exactly hitting the gold mine, I don't think. And you shouldn't, as a team that's coming in at 3-9 last year. So I hope the part about him being demanding and getting the most out of his players is right, because a couple reasons why. First, that was one thing that Dave didn't like about Ron Roberts, was that he was a little mean. He yelled a lot. But by golly, did he run some good defenses at Baylor and has his whole career. And so he was a little too mean. Dave Aranda cut him loose. I don't mind having a mean guy in here. I don't mind having a yeller in here, especially with offensive line, man, where the whole job is a struggle. And the other thing is what Fedora said about him getting the most out of his talent. Because again, it's a company line to just say they're a great recruiter. Even if they believe that, even if it's true that he is a good recruiter, Baylor doesn't need that right now. It'd be nice to have someone who can get portal guys here. Absolutely. But they don't need a high school recruiter right this second. It's nice to have, and Baylor falls behind. But either way, Dave Aranda is not a good high school recruiter. He's not. We're coaching for 1 year here. And that sucks for the near future past this year for Baylor. But all I'm saying is Dave Aranda is not a good recruiter. I don't think that's changing anytime soon. What he needs to worry about for his job is to be able to bring coaches in here with experience who can get the most out of the talent they have now. Because one of the things that his whole job depends on, Dave Aranda, is the fact that they had so many young players that could be foundational pieces for the future. And so, okay, that shows me that you've got the horses in the stable now. They're young and they're still a little inexperienced, but you've got the horses. Perfect. Bring in a coach who can handle the horses. I don't need a coach who's birthing the horses. I need a coach who's riding the horses. And if that's true about Chris Kapilovic, that's all that matters to me in the very immediate future here, because I don't know how long-term all of this staff is going to be. So if it works out this season, of course, it will go longer, but it's a big ask for Baylor to make a major jump this season. So if he can make the most out of the guys he already has in the room, perfect. So take a look at some of the comments, just a few here. Scotty says, supposedly, I heard Gavin Byers is coming back. I've heard that too, Scotty. Hasn't made it official, but I have heard that. And it's tough for me to say, no disrespect to any of the kids on the team, but it's tough for me to say, man, that's a huge win. But I like bringing someone in with some experience. Again, I mean, it's so easy to think that, and I do think that a lot of, man, I don't want all these players coming back on the offensive line. But again, I'll link it back to 2020. Connor Galvin was a sieve that year, and they were terrible on the offensive line. Come back a year later, Connor Galvin's probably the best left tackle in the Big 12, and they have a dynamite offensive line. So I hope that could be the case with a guy like Gavin Byers as well. Benito says, everybody is jumping ship at Michigan State. I wonder why. Yeah, they fired their head coach in September. Kind of a scandal there. Inappropriate phone calls with females or whatever it was. I don't even remember the whole story. But yeah, so that's why there's a lot of jumping ship right now at Michigan State. They kind of just lasted the season, and that was it, which leads to a good point, which Scotty brings up. There are Michigan State players in the portal. Okay, there are some guys there. So this was one that I had to kind of go to quickly, this video. So I haven't gotten a chance to look in depth at some of the offensive linemen who are out there that he might have coached, specifically with Michigan State. But it's something to look at, because this was not a great year this year for Michigan State, but they have absolutely seen some success in the last few years under Mel Tucker. Again, specifically in 2021, which I know was a couple years ago now. So that's one I will look out for. We'll have some more on that throughout the week. We're also going to talk a lot of Taquan Finn in Thursday's show. This is a very interesting prospect at Baylor at quarterback. Taquan Finn from Toledo. He is taking a visit at Baylor. It looks like either Thursday or Friday he's going to be taking that visit. That would be really, really a good pickup for Baylor. And Scotty also mentioned someone I will be looking at this week, which is Cameron, great name, Cameron Jenkins. Caden Jenkins' brother, a corner out of UNLV, has hit the portal. Twin brother has hit the portal. Caden Jenkins has already shown he's going to stay. That could be an awesome combo for Baylor. So we're going to look at that throughout the week. Let me know what you think about Chris Kapilovic. If you know anything about him, obviously how important the offensive line is going to be. I'm collecting questions in the comments all week for a mailbag. Looks like we've had a good turnout so far, both on that and through DMs. So looks like we're going to maybe do one of those this week and one of those next week as well. So keep bringing those questions in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. And let me know what you think about Chris Kapilovic. Is he going to be the guy that resurrects this Baylor offensive line? I'd love to know what you think. Drop it down there below. Thank you for joining us on this emergency episode. Thank you for making Locked On Baylor your first listen today and every day. We're the only place that's bringing you nothing but Baylor athletics content 5 days a week that isn't coming straight from Baylor. So I'm pretty darn proud of that. Be sure to, again, like and subscribe, get in the comments, and we will see you tomorrow on Locked On Baylor.